morning, everybody, and welcome to our story time. My name is KK. Today's fictional story is titled The Last Fire Team. Without wasting time, here we go. It's 1941, and the Second World War is at its hottest. The Nazis have been victorious in an almost unbroken chain of battlefield successes. It was evident that Europe lay under German domination. Her troops had already set foot on Moscow ground, engaging in the infamous Operation Barbarossa. This was after the United Kingdom, France, and Italy signed the Munich Agreement, in which Germany agreed to the cession of the Sudeten territory of Czechoslovakia and the Non-Aggression Pact signed between Germany and the Soviet Union in 1939. Germany did not hold her end of these agreements, and the Allies felt betrayed. The war was intense. Moscow was plunged into chaos that lasted for months. Families were left destitute. Many innocent civilians, including troops, lost their lives. The German troops penetrated deep into the heart of the city. Many Soviet military strongholds had been overrun by the mighty German army. A lot of people fled the city into the countryside. Base 79 was situated approximately 47 kilometers outside Moscow. Hidden between the mountains, it was the only unit that was capable of reinforcing the already depleting Soviet Union troops inside Germany, which was already under the command of Colonel Ivan Rasputin. He was a renowned soldier with multiple decorations or accolades on his name. He led Base 79 strategically and cunningly. October 4th, 1941, Colonel Rasputin received a telegram from a certain general at the war front, in which he ordered him to send reinforcement and ammunition to the war front. Without hesitation, Rasputin ordered a platoon of soldiers to the mission. He instructed them to carry along a truck of ammunition and another of personnel. At dawn of that day, they left Base 79, slowly driving towards Moscow. It was a risky mission, and Rasputin knew so. But there was nothing he could do, since they were in the middle of a bloody war and loss of life was inevitable. Either way, he advised the platoon commander to be very cautious and alert at all times, and also to stay on constant radio communication. 3 hours into the mission, and so far there was no threat posed on them. The commander and Rasputin were sure that the mission would be a success. And then out of nowhere, a shell landed approximately 100 meters from the first truck with ammo. The convoy stopped quickly, and then the soldiers hopped out of the second truck and stayed low to observe for any potential enemy movement. It was quiet. Upon inspection, they realized that the shell was from a heavy artillery weapon. They assumed it just went astray and landed there randomly. Meanwhile, back in Moscow, the Germans had captured the main communication towers, thus disrupting communication between the Soviet troops. Rasputin tried communicating with the commander of the mission, but up to no avail. This was bad news for him. He was in a pond of quagmire with no exit plan. He desperately needed to know the fate of his soldiers, and he could not assume the worst, so he waited anxiously for some hours. He later called a parade with an intention to see how much strength he had at his disposal. To his surprise, he was just left with a fire team, a chef, including his secretary and 2 IC. All his troops had been tasked on different missions. Meanwhile, the platoon he sent on the mission to Moscow were still en route. They managed to enter Moscow, but just as they entered, or just upon their entry, they were bombarded by tanks and RPGs from different directions. They were overwhelmed. The ammo they carried exploded, and all soldiers were killed on sight. 2 days passed, and still no word from the platoon. Rasputin grew impatient because he wanted to know the fate of his soldiers. On the third day, he called the crew commander of the last fire team and gave him instructions to go on a reconnaissance mission with an intention to find out what happened to the platoon. Sergeant Zizhenko rounded up his men, then they prepared to embark on a mission. They were given one RG-32 truck equipped with a light machine gun on a turret for transportation, which also carried their supplies. The evening of that day, they left Base 79. For a few kilometers, there was no sign of potential enemy activities, and this was good. Though radio communication was still cut, the commander had hope that their mission would be a success. They entered Moscow that day, and then they drove a few kilometers toward the heart of the city. Meanwhile, the German troops were just observing them from the shadows. Sergei was sure that they would reach the war front that day without any contact. How I wish this was so. Just as they were heading towards the St. Basil's Cathedral, a church built in 1561 on orders of Ivan the Terrible, their truck was hit on the side by a rocket from a tank and it overturned. Luckily, no injuries were sustained by the soldiers. About the truck, its right side was totally destroyed, and both the rear wheels exploded or they busted. They managed to crawl out of the wreck, and they stayed low for a while looking for good cover. Among us all the hiding, crawling, and reorganizing, another rocket hit, and this time fragments hit two privates, severing the arm of one and killing the other one instantly. Zinchenko ordered the remaining 3 soldiers, including him, to run towards the nearby house, where they took shelter from the live rockets. After 7 minutes of non-stop shooting, there was silence. Zinchenko and his comrades observed from the window as German troops patrolled the quiet, ghosted streets. He conducted a quick inspection to see how many equipments and ammo they had at hand. Each soldier still had his ammo and rifle. There was but one problem. The sniper died during the rocket attack, and the rifle was still with him outside. The sniper rifle was very vital on this mission. It was almost sunset, so they decided to wait until dark to go and retrieve the rifle from the dead soldier. This was very complicated, because without a sniper, they were not going to be able to retaliate to enemy sniper targeting them. A plan was laid, and time came for one of the soldiers to go and retrieve the rifle. Private Grigori volunteered. In the dark of the night, he stealthily snuck out of their hiding place and tiptoed towards the dead soldier to go and get the weapon. He slowly moved and eventually reached the point. Upon arrival, he lay there for a while whilst observing for any enemy movement. There was silence, so he decided to remove the weapon and move back to their harbor. As he was stripping the weapon from the dead soldier, amongst the shivering and hasty movements, his finger tripped into the trigger and let out a shot. He panicked, and then he lay down, playing dead. The gunshot was heard by both the enemy and his team. They quickly rose up and whispered loudly to get his attention. They asked what happened, but there was silence. Eventually, he responded that the weapon was off safe, and then they were relieved. Meanwhile, German soldiers started a patrol, and their snipers were on alert. Just as Grigori rose up to start moving towards their hiding place, a sniper spotted him and fired a shot towards him. The boy panicked, and instead of laying down, he decided to race for their hiding place. And by luck, he made it inside. Zinchenko was pleased with the private's effort. Upon inspection, he realized that the private had dropped the spare magazines with ammo while he was running. This was very bad, but the sergeant took it calmly and said, "Okay, we will have to go and get the ammo. Grigori, you cover us from sniper fire." He complied. Zinchenko and the other 2 privates exited their hideout towards the magazines that were scattered across the ground, each aiming to come back with at least 1 magazine. Just as they exited, rounds were flying past their heads. Snipers from the buildings had spotted them. Grigori tried giving them cover fire, but it was too late. One soldier, a private, had already been hit. A straight headshot that killed him instantly. Zinchenko and the other privates raced for the other magazines and quickly scooted back to their harbor. Grigori was in tears and self-blame for the tragedy, but Sergeant told him to man up and focus on the problem at hand. He said, "This is not time for emotions. Focus and keep spotting those bloody snipers." Bullets were flying, and then after 10 minutes, there was an awkward silence, like nothing serious was happening a few seconds ago. Zinchenko told his other two remaining soldiers to keep guard, one per shift. He took a nap and then woke up around midnight to relieve them. He said, "You boys should rest now. I'll keep guard." They complied. The next morning, they were awoken by the sounds of heavy artillery landing at the war front. They rose up and each racing for their rifle, but Zinchenko calmed them down and told them that the shells were far from them. Whilst he was talking, his mind landed on an idea. He said, "Wait a minute. We do not have means of communication or to communicate with the war front, but the sound of the shells can give us a clue as to which direction to follow." They stayed hush for a while, and then suddenly another shell landed, and quickly Private Grigori said, "It landed in the northern direction of the city." The team had no map. They lost it in the truck that got blasted by the Nazis' army. Zinchenko ordered the soldiers to hold position until it was dark, and then they would maneuver their way towards their friendly forces' position. Their water was running low. The leader told them to be conservative with their ammo, since there was nowhere to refill once it's finished. It was a hard situation for Zinchenko and his team. No communication, no resupplies, rations were running low. It was really a predicament not for the faint-hearted. The day went by very slow. From their hideout, they could see German tanks and soldiers patrolling. They could see the crows and vultures feasting on the bodies of their dead comrades. They lay there in silence and desperately watching time as it took slow steps, excruciatingly rolling towards sunset. The sight of the destroyed buildings made the city look like it was ruins from a dead planet. It was a very horrific sight to behold. The sun went down. Zinchenko and his team prepared to move. They packed up their luggage at exactly 12 o'clock or 0000 hours. They exited their hideout, tiptoeing towards their friendly forces' position. Though they did not know the exact position, they left everything in God's hand to direct them into a safer direction. Sneaking towards behind enemy lines and continued moving northwards towards the edge of the city. Almost successful, they could see the position of their friendly forces marked with the unique symbols only them could interpret. At around 2 kilometers, their hope was restored. Then it happened that the German defensive fired a flare that illuminated the whole area, leaving Zinchenko and his team exposed in the openness of no man's land. Immediately, they were spotted by German snipers, who instantly opened fire towards them. Before they knew it, there was smoke all around them, shells from mortars exploding left, right, and center. They were overwhelmed. Their friendly forces also started firing back, thinking that the Germans were attacking. Zinchenko and his team lost one member, leaving only Private Grigori and himself. The two crawled into an open ditch left behind by an artillery shell to hide from enemy exposure. He read the situation and came to a conclusion that it was a hexed one. Only one of them can survive to tell the story. So in his mind, he conceived a plan. He went in his pocket and pulled out 2 notes and gave them to Grigori, and then he said, "Take these notes. One is for the brigade commander at the war front, and the other is for my wife. I will distract these guys while you race towards our position." At this point, they were about 800 meters away from their friendly forces. Grigori could not comprehend what the sergeant was articulating, so he asked him to repeat himself. The sergeant responded with an angry voice, "We do not have much time. Take these notes and run towards our position. I will cover you." The private responded. But say, that is dangerous. We will die. The enemy will see me running, then they will shoot me down. Sergeant then responded, they will not see you. I'll make them think that there is only one of us. So now you will crawl towards the other ditch, or that ditch towards that direction. Once you are there, just whistle, then I will do my thing. Once that happens, you run, my boy. Understand? Do not trot, but run as fast as you can. This note must reach the commander no matter what. Do you understand? The boy replied. I responded, yes, sir. The shooting ceased, and in the still of the night, he crawled towards the ditch about 100 meters away from where they were hiding. Passing through dirty rainwater infested with rotting corpses, he eventually reached the ditch in question. He rested a bit, then he whistled. The sound of his whistle will travel through the dark of the night and reached Zinchenko's ears. He was delighted. He knelt down for one final prayer. He knew he was not going to survive the endeavor. After that, he crawled out of the ditch a few meters, then he stood up and started running into an opposite direction while firing his pistol. Within a few seconds, the battlefield was like daylight again. Flares all over the sky, shells landing, bullets flying past him. Grigory was so heartbroken by Zinchenko's sacrifice, but he knew that one had to survive for the message to reach the command. While sobbing, he rose from his position and started running towards his friendly forces. Zinchenko's plan worked. All firepower was directed to him, leaving Grigory to run freely. He arrived at their position and quickly fell into the trench. The soldiers who were nearby him quickly grabbed him and took him to the commander for interrogation. Meanwhile, Zinchenko continued ducking and dodging bullets and shells, but he was suddenly hit by one RPG rocket, hitting him in the left leg, leaving him an amputee. He fell to the ground in pain, rolling into a ditch, and eventually the shooting subsided, and Zinchenko attended to his amputated leg. He quickly removed his belt, picked up a small stick to create a tourniquet with the intention to reduce the bleeding. He lay there for 3 days. While all this was unfolding, Grigory was under serious scrutiny to determine his legitimacy. He proved himself, after which he passed the note to the commander. The commander read through, and the information in the note was that the commander commanding Base 79 suggested that the troops must abandon their defensive position and engage into an offensive operation on the German troops, as it was the only way to win the war. It was complicated, though, and it seemed rather outlandish. Preposterous suggestion to make at that point, since the Soviet troops' numbers were already dwindling and they did not have enough strength to conduct such an operation. It was really a gamble. The brigade commander and his right-hand man deliberated and came to a conclusion to give it a try. Either way, the risk was inevitable. The general complied because he had trust in his highly decorated compatriot from whom the message had come. Following Rasputin's plan, they prepared for an offensive attack on the Nazis' troops. 2 days later, the Soviet Union launched a surprise attack on the German forces. They were forced into a retreat. Hitler was furious. Several senior generals were fired. The Soviet Union succeeded in crushing various German formations, cutting off supplies. The Germans faced heavy casualties and eventually retreated out of Moscow and eventually Soviet Union respectively. Zinchenko was still in his ditch, waiting to die, when he heard a voice saying, "Say, I found something." It was a Soviet Union troop conducting chicken parade on the battlefield, and one of them had spotted Zinchenko and noticed that he was still alive. They strapped him on a stretcher and gave him to the medics. He was relieved so much, he cried and thanked God for keeping him alive. He was later flown to the military hospital, where he was given the care he deserved. Zinchenko's story reached the ears of Grigory, who came running to the hospital to see his fellow comrade. He was so pleased to see him alive. He hugged him and then they talked, and then gave back his note and said, "Since you are still alive, you can give it to your wife yourself." They laughed and Grigory left. Immediately, he went straight to the general's office and told him about Zichako's ultimate sacrifice, leading to the success of the war. The general called a parade. They were conferred awards of bravery and hard work to both Zichako and Grigori for their outstanding efforts in the war. Zichako immediately retired, and Grigori saw himself grow in rank and retired as a 2-star general in 1987. That's the end of our story, and I hope you join me again next time. Thank you very much. Bye.